Hi lovelies, I'm your host Thea. Join me each week as we discuss all things AAA, indie, game development, art and more here at Girls in Gaming.
Welcome back to another episode of Girls in Gaming. Today we have Sen with us and we're going to be discussing our favourite Baldur's Gate companions and romances and some other ones from different games as well. How are you today, Sen?
I'm not too bad. I'm reasonably good. How about
Reasonably
you?
good. I'm okay, though I am missing having you around and having our weekly gossip sessions. It's been very lonely.
Yeah, no, I know, me too. I miss being around you guys, and recovering from surgery is always a little bit challenging. Not that I've had a lot of surgery, but yeah. I'm good to go. Can do it.
Okay. So we were starting this conversation before, where I brought up my own experiences with Baldur's Gate in terms of Lae'zel. So I kind of don't want to give too much away, but I'm going to have to. It's a spoiler alert, and there's a lot out there anyway in your romances with different companions. But for me, one, I have been really blown away by how genuine the representation of the companions feels. Like, it's very natural. I very much believe that these are real people and individuals with their own experiences and personalities. But one thing that I really, really liked about Lae'zel, particularly because I feel like we get stuck in this like feminine trope as well, where it's kind of like the hero comes in and they're the savior. You get a little bit of this actually with Lae'zel, the further along your romance goes, but at the very start it is very much I can save myself, thank you, and almost resentful for the fact that they find you attractive or that they want anything to do with you, which I really like. What would you call that? That's like the Tsundere kind of personality.
Well, I mean, I think it's just, they're more fully fleshed characters, right? And they all have, like you said, they've got their own personalities, and they're not just like one trope. I think, and as you like get to experience more of their backstory, it sort of like fleshes out their character as opposed to them just being there for the sake of like
romance, and that's it. You're only here because the main character needs someone to caress.
Exactly. So I think it's great that they've done that. So it's not just a matter of like, okay, here you are, you're just a placeholder for this trope, and that's it. So they've really, I feel like they've given them quite a fair shake. I think it's, it's a good representation in some ways.
I think like specifically for me as well, and I will bring this up again and again and again, but it's the representation of the females that I really love. So if we go through it, I've heard of Shadowheart being referred to like the emo princess. Right, so she'll stab you, but also she's a bit of a princess.
Yeah, a little bit, and so her backstory is pretty interesting too, right? She's on her own personal quest, and she's got her own things going on, which I think kind of plays very well into the whole Baldur's Gate like Dungeons and Dragons thing. It's like these are characters that inhabit the world, and they all have their things going on, because like it's almost as if as like player characters in D&D, you're just like an avatar, and you're exploring this world that's happening around you, right, in some ways. And I feel like they've really captured that in the characters as well, because all the characters have their own storylines and their own things going on, and you as character, there's romance and you interact with them, but you're there to experience their stories in some ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I really love as well with this is when you're just friends with them, the relationship still feels important and valuable. Like, you don't lose that sense of relationship just because you're not romantically involved with them. Often like a slight tangent. I'm now obsessed with the voice actor for Karlach, Samantha. So I found out she identifies as non-binary. Well, I shouldn't say she, they, them.
Really?
So they've said that they're non-binary, and that they really drew on that actually for their representation of Karlach. And they thought, well, if I was a gigantic woman going about the world who liked to smash things, how would I kind of express myself? And she said it really didn't feel that far removed from their own personality, so it was very natural. And yeah, she's a bit of a tease in a way. She really kind of goes, I watch too much TikTok, but I was watching some of her TikTok responses. So she's on Twitch, and there was this comment. Both my husband and I are in love with Karlak. Like, what do we do with that? And their response was, well, I've got two hands, and I feel like
God.
I know. And I was like, oh, I already loved Karlak, but now I love Samantha too.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think Karlak is like, okay, well, to just call her like a strong character is almost, it doesn't do justice to her, right?
No, I think they're taking that kind of. I was going to say, in the magical Disney castle, oh my god, I can't remember, the Mirabelle one. What's that called? Encanto.
The what?
There we go. I did it. My brain worked. Encanto, with Louisa and that kind of like representation of, here you have this masculine, strong, independent woman that really doesn't take any shit. Yeah. But, that does not mean then that she's not emotional, that she doesn't have desires, that she doesn't enjoy, unicorn donkeys. And I feel like Karlak's very similar. Right? She wants to smash things and get covered in blood and battle. That's her thing. But she wants to do it with her soulmate while they hold hands. And it is so cute. And I think as well, what I loved about that representation, and the same with Lae'zel and similarly with Shadowheart, is all of these women are kind of, they have this duality, right? One side of them being very strong and capable, but then simultaneously, in some capacity, they need some kind of emotional support, some love, some tenderness. And that's something I really, really enjoyed about the female companions with Baldur's Gate, is it allows us as women to be able to be seen as strong and capable, but also that there is room for our emotions, that there is room for us to still be vulnerable and strong. We don't have to be one or the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so...
I think this is a really good point, because, I think in the past it might have been handled a little bit wrongly, because they're, just either painting these women as just strong and nothing else. There's no depth in their character. At the same time, similarly, you look at a character like John Wick, right, who's going around a rampage, just killing lots of things, blowing lots of things up. But, like, the thing that ties John together is, like, his dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if that arc didn't exist, where he's doing this for, his reasons, like, it just doesn't work, right? He's just this dude that's going on some rampage, which makes him a villain, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
These characters are relatable, and you can identify some part of yourself within them that makes them human, right? You find humanity in these things, and I think it's great that, they've created these characters that have that element in them, that we can see a part of ourselves in the experiences that they go through, which makes them relatable.
And they're very three-dimensional. They're not, I'm a damsel in distress, I need saving, or I'm really strong and I don't need saving. And one of the other games that it kind of reminds me of, to some extent, would be Dragon Age Inquisition. I mean, I could probably say this for all the Dragon Ages, but because Dragon Age Inquisition was the most recent one that I finished playing, I would actually, and it may actually kill me for saying this, but I think Baldur's Gate does it so much better with the companions. One thing that, well, I'm not sure if you played Dragon Age Inquisition, but you do have options for companions in that as well, and they're good companions. I similarly here, where you have in Dragon Age Inquisition, you have Cassandra, She's amazing. She's a human fighter warrior. She's extremely strong. She's kind of grungy, cropped short hair, scars on her face, right? But then she has this little side quest where you find out she's actually deeply in love with these kind of smutty adventure books that one of your other companions writes. I know. And she's like, oh, please don't tell anybody or I'll cut your tongue out, So it really shows, again, that duality between she isn't just this strong, unfeeling woman, right?
Right.
Yeah, right? And that it's valid. You're allowed to have that, that you don't have to be one or the other. And then there's similar...
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when people paint characters as too perfect, yeah, they just become like robots in some sense, right?
Exactly.
So it's a little funny vulnerability that they have in their character.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, they take the piss out of Cassandra, for particularly Varric, who they have a really terrible relationship, Cassandra and Varric. They're kind of like always picking on each other. And Varric is the author of the books that Cassandra loves. So it becomes this really...
no way.
Yeah, no, it becomes this really funny, cute little relationship between them, and these comments come up, and there are these little quests within the game related to their relationship. And similarly with all the other companions that you have as well. And I think that's one of the things that makes a game and the companions feel more alive and three-dimensional is their relationship with each other. So it's not just you as the main character romancing people, but they either like or dislike each other. And that's something, again, in Baldur's Gate that I think we all get a really good chuckle out of when you take certain companions together and they have those little conversations when you're out. Oh, it's so funny. Lae'zel and Shadowheart, if you have Karlach and Will together, just... anyone, there's the different combinations and the different kind of dialogue that you can unravel in their relationships between each other. It makes me cackle so much. I really, really love it. And I'm comparing it to games like Dragon Age and Mass Effect, because those are some of the only other games that I feel like really did companionship and character exploration well, where you feel that is just as much of an important part of the game as actually doing the adventuring and finishing the quests.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think Baldur's Gate does that quite well. It really balances, different parts of its gameplay.
So, have you played any other games with companions that you felt were really good or up to kind of like this standard that we've seen with Baldur's Gate?
Companions that... You mean like with stuff that's, with like freedom, with choices and stuff, or just in general? Just
in general. Like it could be dialogue or the relationship built between your character and the other one that you really enjoyed.
Hard to say. Although, I mean, if you want to give examples of the opposite where, they're really just placeholders, there's tons of them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In terms of, games with really good character progression, God, I think that probably says something that I can't really think of any just off the top of my head.
I mean, there's always the classics, and again, I think this really depends on the type of gamer you are. So I'm an absolutely, RPG adventurer. Hang on, Sen. There you go, one of the interesting things with recording with children. What was I saying? Oh, right. I'm an RPG, fantasy, adventurer, explorer kind of person. That's the realm in which I live. So for me, there are heaps of things that might come to mind, like The Witcher or... I wouldn't say Diablo. I love the game, but I think it's fairly shit at creating really good three-dimensional characters. Exactly. The story's not so bad. The gameplay is fairly straightforward, but the characters, that's not their game, right? That's not what they aim to do.
Right.
Yeah, so I think or maybe even, you might have some experience with this because I haven't played this yet, but the new Harry Potter game?
Well, I played it a little bit. I didn't get anywhere finishing it. But, I mean, I did think that the characters were entertaining at the very least.
Can you
Like,
have kind of
I
like
thought the voice
companionships
acting-
and stuff, or?
I don't think so. It's pretty much like a solo game.
Oh, I feel like that's
And you're
such a
just
missed
sort of interacting with
opportunity.
stuff. Yeah, that's probably a good point. I think there was a lot of lore and there's a lot of like inspiration and things like that. There's lots of people to talk to. But yeah, as far as I could tell, there was not like, it doesn't go as deep as Baldur's Gate for sure.
And I feel
some of the games that I've played recently were like, probably not RPG games that had a lot of story. I'm just trying to think. What was the last like real story-based game that I played? I think it might have been a while. I don't really
that's
remember.
okay. I think like probably the most recent one would have been Baldur's Gate once I kind of started to convince everyone to play it because I wanted other people to play with.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Recovering from surgery, that game was a little bit intense to play. So I was playing Hades and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's actually got a storyline that's handled really well too, to be honest. Even though it's like a roguelike and you just go around killing stuff and bashing things open. Like there is a big story element in that as well that ties everything together. And yeah, I mean, the characters in there were, not that three-dimensional. They're pretty flat. You know, a story is not the main thing to do with that anyway, but I think.
Whereas something like Baldur's Gate is really just as dependent on the development of the characters as it is on the actual story and the exploration and the battles. Like they all play a really important role in making the game what it is. So let's refocus back onto main companions then for Baldur's Gate. Because obviously Girls in Gaming kind of podcast, love to get your input on the. I'm going to say there's more than 3 because I know we can have Minthara as a potential romance option as well. Out of those female companions, who's your favourite and why?
That's a good question. I'd probably say Karlak. I just love her confidence. You know, I feel like she's positive. She's
so positive. Literally clawed her way out of hell.
Right, and she's just bursting with this energy.
Yeah.
And,
she's like, isn't this beautiful? Isn't it a lovely day to be alive?
Yeah. Confident, positive person. I think I really like that.
Golden retriever vibes.
Yeah, and she's inspiring in that way. And, but she's also got this this trauma, and she's got these things that affect her life a lot. And in the face of that, she still goes on, and I think that's really great.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that makes her more attractive to me as a person is, like, I've had not great moments in my life, and I really struggled to be optimistic and positive, and I think one thing everyone might desire in their life is that positiveness, so that positivity, and because she's just like a walking ball of positivity, that draws you in naturally. And also, when she's like, stand behind Mama K, I'm like, okay.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think that's really cool, and it doesn't mean that she's not vulnerable from time to time.
No, absolutely.
It just shows her the strength of the character that, when times do get tough, that she can sort of rise above it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we need a bit of that inspiration in our lives. Like, for example, I might be going through a pretty hard time now, but knowing that the hard times are not forever. And there's going to be like easier moments, and there's going to be like more difficult moments.
And it's also about like who you take through those moments to help lift you up.
That's a very good point. So, I mean, my day at the moment, like, things hurt. So, I mean, thinking about Karlak actually makes me feel a little better, because it's like, the tough parts in a day, it's like there's a few hours where things are pretty tough, but for the rest of it, like, it's actually okay, And I think life has to be like that sometimes, that, when it gets tough or when things are really rough, to accept that sometimes things are pretty shit.
Yeah.
But that it's not always like that, and there's good parts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Lae'zel can be overlooked for this as well, because she's actually very similar to Karlach in her personality. No, she's not an optimist. Yes, she's not an optimist like Karlach. She doesn't go out and go, "Oh, what a beautiful day to be alive." But once she has an amazing character arc, if you're doing like a straight run through and you're not evil or anything like that, and you do the romance with her, honestly, it is such a gorgeous, a little bit emotional kind of movement in character development. When you first romance her, she makes you fight her, right? So this is like a whole tradition with the Githyanki, source of my scars or my bruises or something like that. And that is quite brutal, right? But as you move on and she has the conflict with her religion and beliefs, there's this other cutscene that you have later on once you're through into Baldur's Gate. And I think she calls you something along the lines of source of my hope. And she's sitting there and she wakes you up early to go and look at the sun rising. And she's just sitting there in awe of the beauty of the world, and she basically says, you're the reason that she's able to see this beauty, whereas before all she could see was blood and violence. So it's an incredibly emotive, beautiful moment where someone's learnt to appreciate their life and their freedom. And I know I'm very emotional. I get moved by everything, but it was really beautiful. And I thought, damn it, I need to go back and play again and romance Lae'zel, because this was all Ed's playthrough, so I got to see that. But every time I see these little moments with different companions, I think, damn it, I need to start another game.
For sure, I think that's probably would be pretty rewarding to experience.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and it just goes to show again, like, maybe they don't intrinsically have that duality between the brutalness, like, of being a strong, independent woman, or that softer, more emotional side. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean it can't be learnt. It doesn't mean it can't be uncovered. If someone is treated with tenderness consistently, if someone is valued consistently, that those elements can come out. They can start to be vulnerable, and that they can start to see the beauty in the world. And I think that's really lovely as well. I haven't done too much with Shadowheart, surprisingly, but I will, because I feel like the princess needs her turn. I don't think I can go through this game and finish it without having romanced everybody humanly possible. But she's got some really interesting elements to her story as well that make her really interesting. And I think some people have been really unfair to her and to Gale in their saying, they're boring, they're princesses. I think it's the whole, they're not traumatized enough.
Yeah, no, I think out of those three characters that we're talking about, she's definitely the most sort of stereotypical one in that sense. Like, she's this kind of dark and broody. Yeah. And she's got this dark secret, and
she's a bit cliche.
But we've seen that story before a lot. So, but I mean, it's she's still independent in that sense. Like,
she doesn't
going about doing her own thing. She's not relying on anybody. She's pretty self-sufficient. Actually.
Can I just say, and again, like, spoilers, because I don't know, you probably haven't got to this point yet, but there's this point, right, where she's confronted with the reality of her situation, and the next long rest you have, she's bleached her hair. She's changed it, so it's not. I know. Wow. I've never felt more seen. I'm like, she's a real woman. This is what we all do. Yeah. You have an existential crisis, and either you chop all your hair off or you dye it a completely different color. And
exactly.
And you know what she is? She's a very stereotypical woman. She is. She has her little moments of like, I can't talk to you right now. I've got too much on my mind. Of like, I wasn't sure if you were ever going to come. And it's like, about time you realised how beautiful I am. I feel like
Well, they had to throw in exactly. They had to throw in like one of those characters in the game. I feel.
Absolutely. But I'm like, we need to do it justice, right? She's kind of all of us, really. It's the reality of being a woman, not like the gladiator that could do anything or like impeccable intelligence or whatever. She's pretty normal, and I think that's why she's getting a lot of slack. And also, I've seen a lot of stuff recently about her being ugly, and I may actually have to blind everybody, because how could you ever look at her and say, that's an ugly person? No, she's gorgeous.
Exactly. I think some people are just, I mean...
tainted by the persistence of perfection.
You know, like, what are you comparing this to? Like, she's like a normal person.
And trust me, I get the feeling people...
Right?
Yeah, I feel like the people that are going to be saying, oh, she's not very attractive, probably wouldn't even be able to catch something at that high level anyway.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, you know, endless streams. So, yeah, that's like a thing these days when they're calling like these absolutely gorgeous women mid.
Like they could do, like they could do that good.
Like, I understand, you know, doesn't mean it's right. I don't condone it, but it's like I get where people are coming from.
Yeah.
When they say stuff like that, and it's just dumb.
Yeah.
You know.
Anyway,
or a little bit spiteful, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's going to be it for today's episode. It was just a quick chat. It's interesting. It's a good portrayal of different types of women and experiences, and how, as well, character development can be done well to create 3D characters that impact not just your experience as the player, but the world that you're playing in. So, thanks for joining, Sen, and taking some time out of your recovery. I hope that you'll be on here a little bit more as you start to improve.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a little bit of a tough time, but I'll make it.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Girls in Gaming. Hope to see you next time. GG.